You're watching a TGM production. Hello and welcome back to Tom Mason at the interview, the series where I interview more people. Now, there'll be more interviews in the pipeline, which ignore a pipe or a line. And today's interview, he's best known for his podcast that both iterates the sentiment that people probably say to a lot of people in many walks of life, but he's also an excellent title. It's one and only Jamie Mackinaly.
How's it going, Tom? How,
Yeah,
how are you? It's nice to be here.
nice to meet you. So we shall start at the very beginning because Julie Andrews once said it was a good place to start, and she wasn't wrong. How did you get into the world I like to call the media industry?
It's always a good question, and I'm loving your energy as well. I'm feeling knackered today, so you're piping me up after a day of working in the very industry with you're asking me about. Um, I was always interested in drama and art and sort of creative stuff. I don't know. I just sort of always found my calling in that, and I didn't really know how that could become a career. So when I was very young, I was like, I'll become a director because that's what you don't really know what a lot of roles are that exist.
Yeah.
Went to film school. I did film and theatre. I did it at uni. I did an MA in screenwriting. Very soon realised I didn't want to be a writer or a director. I like certain short films and did an ITV drama called Karen Perry up in Scotland, which weirdly was set in my hometown of Fife, well, in Glenrothes in Kirkcaldy, which was bizarre. It was my first job in a nice way. Um, After I did that job, I was very fortunate to get onto a scheme
Yeah.
for script editing. I script editor traineeship, which I did, and then I've been now been doing that for 5 years, alongside the podcast I run called Just Get a Real Job as well. And the two have sort of very much intertwined now, which is really interesting, and it does help my career a lot doing that show.
Yeah. And you mentioned Kieran Piper there, which is excellent in every sense, not just because the show's really good, but it's also because Val McDermott is incredible as a writer and whenever she appears as a personality, which you don't expect a crime writer to be that funny. But why do you think there's so much stuff now filmed and not just for TV but for film and for radio? Why do you think there's a lot more around Scotland now entered the global market? Why do you think there's more stuff to represent Scotland?
I think there's so much rich story and humor, and there's a great landscape to make
Yeah,
stuff in, and I don't even just mean like the actual landscape that is often associated with
yeah,
Scotland. I think there's just a great industry. Like people in Scotland are generally very funny, very good at telling stories. It's part. I think any place that
yeah,
traditionally has particularly maybe got quite a connection to working class roots and stuff as well is always going to have that certain like kind of storytelling
yeah,
stuff in their bones. I mean, it'd be like the same in Ireland. I mean, I actually always look at Ireland and think we should be better at than we are now. I don't know. Maybe I'm quite cynical. I still think Scotland doesn't produce enough of its own thing.
yeah,
But compared to maybe 10 or 15 years ago, we'd done very well, and there's some brilliant dramas coming out of Scotland. Dinosaur, a new comedy on
yeah,
BBC, it literally just come out this week. I interviewed the director of that from my podcast a few years ago, and there's some great stuff coming out of Scotland now. It's really exciting to see. It would be nice for there to be more, and for the ecosystem to maybe be even better than it is. Because I talk about this a lot on my own show at the moment. I think it's important to be realistic, but that nearly half of the TV industry in the UK are out of work, and I think Scotland, particularly for many creative people, it's not an easy time.
yeah.
But that being said, there is still some great stuff coming out and being shot here, and it's great to see. And long may it continue, and hopefully continue to grow even more.
Yeah, and the thing that makes it really interesting when you see those international products come to not just Scotland but the UK in general, like having Spider-Man over here, which was a very big deal. But I think that the even bigger deal was having the Lord of the Rings second series being swapping New Zealand to for like London, and they're just going to CGI in a couple more mountains. It's like I understand it's probably cheaper because there's probably not a lot going on over it, but I do think it's weird that you want to swap New Zealand. But for the UK and just add a couple more mountains from New Zealand, which makes no sense. But do you think that it's good for local talent to have these big budget works because it means that they can get an experience in a field that they might not normally get that job to do?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's great. It's great that people want to film here. I think the more that people do, it builds a good reputation for the industry. It's good for the local ecosystem. I mean, there's loads of Running Man was filming in Glasgow as well. Loads of big stuff, and it's really nice to go to the cinema and go, oh, that's that bit of Glasgow, or that's that bit of Edinburgh, whatever it might be. Department Q on Netflix, another example. I think there's a mixed reaction to it on the ground here in Scotland. I think some people often think this is great, but they tend to bring their own crew and their own creative sort of people with them from Hollywood or wherever it's from. So you're maybe not giving that local talent as much of an opportunity. I think in an ideal world you'd have both. You would have the great productions coming here to film, but then you'd also have your own like more local productions also doing the same, which you do have, but it'd be nice to maybe feel like there was a bit more. But again, like as I said, 10, 15 years ago, people would probably have bitten their hand off for where we're at now. So maybe I should be more optimistic and positive. I know Ashley Dick, who you've interviewed before as well. She, a good friend of mine, she's often like very optimistic about the state of the Scottish screen industry and is really champions it. And I sometimes wish I could be as positive about it as Ash. But there is loads of great stuff
Yeah.
happening as well.
Yeah, and we mentioned how they bring on the Hollywood people because films take like month and month, and they're probably hanging around in X hotel in the local area or wherever they're all hanging out. Does that sort of help with the local talent that might get to network with them and go, oh, can I come and meet you because you're working on this film? Would you think that sort of helps another way for certain people to get on the next stage of the ladder because there's enough creative people from across the pond knocking about for more people to network.
It probably does, yeah. I'm not sure how much that actually will happen in reality in terms of, for example, let's say like I don't know, Glenn Powell and Running Man. Like they're probably so busy filming that they're not really going to have time to. They won't want to do anything outside of that. But that they do use some local crew, and I'm sure. I think if you've been to a location, often what's nice is they maybe come back and like do interviews or some of the press junket where they've been and stuff as well. So that stuff's all great. I mean, it's important to see yourself represented on screen as well. I think often the thing is though these films are often they're meant to be it's meant to be New York and
Yeah,
you can see the similarities between Glasgow's layout to that.
yeah,
So there is definitely positives of it. It's a huge part of our economy. I think the screen industry is like a huge. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it brings in. I think it's like one of the 10th biggest sectors in the UK
yeah,
for what it brings in. So I interviewed the creative industries minister for Just Get a Real Job as well, and he very much was making this point. It's like a big, it's a big asset, and I think we need to celebrate it more. The creative industries in general, like most creative people don't do it for the economy, but it is also a very good boost for it. So that is why we should fund it more. It's why we should celebrate it more.
yeah, and that's what's really interesting because you have this sort of feeling that there's a lot more output coming out of from where I'm sat, which is a chair. Um, no one, well, probably a couple more hours away from Scotland, but you sort of get that feeling that there's a lot more coming out of it, and I think that it's when you watch TV now is a very good example. So let's say I'm going to say last Thursday, this Saturday, there's two programs coming out of Ireland that have been on, and it's like you feel like it's on all the time, and then you watch Scotland, and you've got like Scott Squad's still really popular, but you've got like Dinosaur and all these things that really like becoming even more popular than you think. And do you think that having those frequent having enough, do you think that sort of helps to go, well, we're not just, as you've said, the beautiful landscape, we are this inventive storytelling. It's like Shetland. Yes, Shetland looks beautiful. Yes, people have got questions why someone wants to live in Shetland if there's a murder once a year, but you can still tell there's still stories to be told in an isolated village that isn't the county of Midsummer. Do you think that's a positive step for representing what Scotland is story-wise to the rest of the world?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, but I love hearing when people from other parts of the UK have watched shows out of Scotland. Like,
Yeah.
some of my in-laws I saw recently had watched Only Child, which is another great comedy
Yeah.
that's come out of Scotland, and the writer as well, someone I've interviewed and know a little bit, and it's great to see that get a second series, and they'd watched that show and really connected with it because a good stories are universal. It's like
Mm.
for me, like a great story can be both local and universal, and that's
Yeah.
always a really nice thing when you can watch something and relate to it because it's your own life, but people across the world or the UK or wherever can also connect it. So yeah, it's brilliant to see more of these things, and it's interesting you mentioned Ireland again because I feel like I'm, as I said at the start, I'm like
Yeah.
so many great books coming out of Ireland, loads of just good films. I think they'd recently done that like the minimum living wage or whatever it is, so artists get like a universal sort of basic income
Yeah.
type thing people are raving about. Again, I have interviewed people from Ireland who very much are the same as me, the way I talk about Scotland, who are like, it's not that good here. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's still hard to be a creative person. There's things that could be improved. Um, I think what is good is there is definitely good funding available
Yeah.
for certain things in Scotland as well. Obviously, again, there's still lots of work to do, but there is great people working behind the scenes to try and make it as good an industry as possible. And I think the BBC actually really are trying very hard to commission great shows, and they're under a lot of financial strain and stuff. I mean, we might come on to talk about River City and that the fact that's been cancelled, but I do completely understand where often the commissioners are coming from. It must be a very, very hard job to be a commissioner, and that you know they have invested. Hopefully, more money is going to be coming into the nations and regions across the UK to make more drama, so and make more shows in general.
Yeah. And so throughout this interview so far, we've mentioned Ireland quite a lot, and I think what we can deduct Ireland of a point here, just to be really make it Ireland slightly annoyed. But I think that one of the greatest dramas that I don't know if it's going to get a second series that really showcases Scotland in that like that Ireland's got one program, but I don't think it hasn't got an English title, so we'll never be able to pronounce it. But
Mm.
that's not my that is my fault actually. But The Island, which came out, I'm gonna
Mm.
say last year, that didn't only showcase how you can still tell an excellent drama from using another language, but it also showcased that not Ireland that Scotland has got more to offer than
Mm.
just Shetland. So for me, because I'm really fascinated by Gaelic in all its forms, not just in its Scottish form. I think I watched it because I was really curious to see how you can make a high-end drama, but.
Mm.
From a family point of view, they loved Shetland, so because it had that feeling of what Shetland gave you, it went, wow, I can still enjoy that, and you can get everything out of it. Do you think that that's a positive step for the Gaelic side of the industry because it showcases that they can still make high quality. They might make the odd game show that might not be the greatest thing in the world. It might be alright, but it might not be the greatest thing in the world. But having a high-end drama to showcase there is storytelling that can be represented. Do you think that's a good thing because it's not just had its BBC Ullaba airing, it's had its BBC Four airing as well?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, funnily enough, Tom, I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure today that's been commissioned for a second series. I think this is just like literally today I was reading.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's been commissioned, which is really good to see. And I actually know some of the team that make that and work on that at Black Camel Pictures or Black Camel. I think it's Black Camel Pictures. Definitely called Black Camel. I don't know the last part of the
Yeah.
time. Anyhow, I diverge. But no, it's very good to see that things like that getting made. And yeah, it's I think an interesting one for a lot of the creative team on it as well to work on because it is a very different to what's been made before. So yeah, it can work as a high end drama, and what's good is that it's not just found its own an audience of people that speak the language. It's found an audience of people that also are just interested in it, and also can I just say your knowledge of Scottish television is very impressive. I mean, most people down south haven't even heard of things like Scot Squad or Still Game and stuff. So fair play to you.
Yeah, it was Scott Squad's one of those things that it was. I think the first couple of Scott Squad I saw that made me go, now you're talking excellent thing. Mainly because like Police Interceptors and all those type of shows that are quite easily mocked. So I was surprised no one had done it before. But it was a bit where they've got it's Bam or No Bam, where they're all the bins, and it's like there's a criminal in one of the bins,
Mm.
and it's like, of course. of course, that's something that is definitely something you would see police interceptors because the raw way, oh yeah, but it just makes it funny because it's like, oh, I sort of, even though I'm not in Scotland, I still get that joke, and I think that that's what makes that and still game universal is that you can remove Scotland from it and you can still have something that I will resonate with. So if you think of like old people for Scots for still game, there's a lot of you remove Scotland from it and all that, you'll still see a bit of old people from Wales or old people from Ireland or your local pub in Yorkshire, as a very broad example. But you can sort of understand that this it still connects. Do you think that was good about Scottish drama and Scottish comedy? Because no matter where you are in the world, you can still like I don't know, you can sort of like understand that and sort of think, oh, that represents me in a way, even though there's huge differences, but there's a lot of it you can say, oh, I've experienced something very similar to that.
Definitely, I think it's the thing about all good drama and all good comedy and all like I love the so you watch comedy from all around the world. There's some great like I've completely forgotten the name of it. I was watching an Australian series recently, and it's the same thing. It's like I don't relate to the lifestyle as such. It's slightly different. I mean, it's similar enough to the UK. We don't all go to the beach and get the sunshine, but
Yeah,
it was very universal and you connect to it. So I think yeah, it's the same. I think good stories and good drama, no matter where they're from, Scotland or not, like will connect with audience in that way. And I think yeah, Still Game definitely does do that.
yeah. And before we move on, I've generally got this like annual thing to mention now due to the fact that I'm still confused and I don't think I've ever had anyone explain it. But the thing that's really interesting is when you see sketch shows in on BBC Oliver. I think it's might be it's one or the two, but I think it might be OMC or it might be the other one that it's probably not pronounced OMC either. But there's a sketch where it's this bloke and obviously they all speak Gaelic, but he rings up his brother and his brother happens to be and I don't know why logistically it doesn't make any sense to me, but his brother speaks Gaelic, but he's Donald Trump. So the like brothers, probably played by the same actor, but they're both from Scotland. Obviously, Donald Trump has a golf club in Scotland, so probably. But he speaks Gaelic, so it's a Gaelic Donald Trump having a conversation with his brother about what's going on in Scotland at the moment. And to me, that makes no sense logistically. But I can sort of see where the joke is and find that absolutely hilarious. But logistically, if you really want to get into the detail, it makes no sense for Donald Trump to know another language other than the muttering that he speaks normally. And do you think that that's what's really interesting because that you're able to step out of what is the sort of mold of what you would think sketch would be because it's trying to break the boundary to say, well, it might not be in English, but it is still as inviting and still there's still enough talent in that arena.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't speak that language either. So even as a Scottish person, so like for to me, like seeing any sketches that are in Gaelic or whatever, like I can, like I probably is in some way similar to you, where I can't quite always relate to everything.
Yeah.
I know people that do, and I know directors and people in the industry that work in it. But yeah, probably it probably is the case. I mean, one of my favourite Scottish shows, which used to be on every New Year, only an excuse, and it was like sketch for football. Fantastic stuff, like where it would be really surreal stuff, and you'd be like, "How have they made that work?" But
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah, and m moving swiftly on, but a few years ago in I'm gonna say in Birmingham, we had doctors. It was on the top 10 list of things where if an actor said, "Have you done a blank?" Doctors were on that list. Have you done a Midsummer's and all this? And when Doctors ended, it had that sort of damage to the area in a sense. You could tell it from the outside world, it seemed to be a big loss. And when they aired the final episode, there is a point to what I'm saying here, but when they aired the final episode, they aired a documentary, and don't ask me why, but they aired an episode of Bargain Hunt. Um, Kia Peg, who was in Doctors at the time, said Bargain Hunt was the best thing she's ever done. Um, she's very young, so there's still a lot of time, and Bargain Hunt is quite good, so I'm not saying it's terrible. But what's interesting is seeing the parallels from that and then seeing River City and having the parallels of when I say parallel, I literally mean the only difference River City's got that Doctors had is, from my knowledge, there's not a bargain hunt. There is still a documentary airing very not so long after the final episode has aired, which is really odd because it means that the BBC are willing to funnel money into a documentary, but not able to funnel money into creating more episodes, which confuses me. But in your line of work, what's it been like? Script editing on the show itself? Is it have you like improved your skill as a script editor over the years, or do you think that you've sort of learned more about the industry in general rather than just specifically to script editing?
So just to quickly go back to your doctors and River City point, and then I'll talk about script editing as well, of course.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. There's a lot of parallels. I feel like I keep saying I've interviewed this person, blah blah blah, it's just because I've had so many conversations about. I've done a lot of work on this, and Philip Ralph is a brilliant writer and someone who's campaigned a lot. He was a writer on Doctors and went viral a couple of years ago for an incredible Twitter thread when it used to be called Twitter at the time about the cancellation of Doctors and its impact on the industry. And I was lucky enough to get to interview Phil, and I've now spoke to him 3 times, and he's had quite a big impact on me in the way I think about the TV industry and try and use my voice and platform to try and flag some of the issues that are facing us as freelancers and people working in TV. And I think the loss of soap is having a massive impact on the industry's ecosystem. I do understand why the BBC have come to certain decisions. I know funding is tight. I totally get it's a changing medium as well. The audience numbers are decent. I get that slowly over time, it tends to be an older audience. Some of the numbers aren't quite there anymore. They want to spend money on stuff that will, may potentially have more longevity. I just sometimes there is like a loss to that ecosystem. Part of me, when River City first got cancelled, I was quite upset about it. It's obviously a difficult time going for a redundancy and seeing the effect on other people and things, and knowing the loss it'll have on the local ecosystem and talent pipeline and stuff. What I do hope is, and the BBC have commissioned other stuff in Scotland. There's a new drama called Councils coming out, for example. Some other things. I just hope that we maybe move back to this model of making some more lower budget things
Yeah.
that are able to run longer, give more opportunities to people. I think often we're always constantly making high end drama that's very prestige to match the streamer model. We don't always need to do that. It's great to have some of them, but it'd be
Yeah.
great to maybe see them spend what they spend on a big prestige drama on maybe 5 or 6 lower budget things and give people work throughout the year and help bring through newer writers or mid level writers that don't always get the opportunity to write on those
Yeah.
big prestige shows. So that's my sort of kind of take on the similarities. To go back to your actual question though, because I went off on a bit of a rant there slightly about script editing. Yeah, working on a continuing drama is a great lesson as a script editor. I've sort of done it in reverse. Often people in TV will start out in continuing drama and then go into high end.
Yeah.
I was really lucky at the start of my career to work at STV, to work in TV development and high end drama. I did Screw Series 2 for Channel 4 as an assistant script editor, which was an amazing experience. And then when I finished up at STV, I was lucky enough to get work at River City, and I've done that for 2.5 years now. And yeah, definitely learnt a lot. It's you're making TV on a budget. You're making lots and lots and lots of TV, which is why I look all like this tonight and look knackered and a bit like done in. Because you're doing 12 episodes of television basically at different stages at one go, and there's a lot happening, and you're having to be across a lot of continuity and small detail, and yeah, you learn loads from it.
Yeah. And I think that what I noticed, and you could probably find where the point in River City's history was, you wasn't too sure if it was gonna survive like 30 years and whatever further, was the fact that when it decided to separate it into like blocks of where it's like didn't air for months
Mm.
and then it would come back and then didn't air for months. And for me, that felt like he was like trying to break away from the soap model to go when don't really want to be identified as what you would say as soap is, which if you try and identify what a soap is, then you'll be down the drain going, what on earth am I doing? Because some people say the casualty is a soap, and I wouldn't say casualty is a soap. And because if you say casualty is something, you're gonna have to say Doctor Who's a soap because they're all been going on for 4 million years. But do you think that where do you think the downfall was? Where do you think there was a point where you could see personally that the BBC might come to this decision?
To be honest, I mean, I don't. You don't really see that at the level I'm at. It's always hard to tell. I mean, I think the way that they always done it was commissioned only a year or two ahead, so
Yeah,
it's always hard to tell. I think personally, as just somebody that works in TV and in the industry and has a keen interest and knowledge of it, soaps obviously just a genre that you're always a bit like, it's changing, it's evolving. Even Coronation Street and Emmerdale, which are both flagship soaps, they both reduce their episode count every week. Like
yeah,
it's changing across the board. The way we watch TV is changing across
yeah,
the board. Like
yeah,
it feels like a product of that slightly as well. And um, I don't know. It's a strange one, but yeah, there was no clear moment where you wondered. But I mean, you always have that feeling anyway when you work on anything because no shows last forever. That's you always kind of know that. I mean, unfortunately, I've been in quite a few cancellations. Screw didn't get commissioned for a third series either, so maybe I'm bad luck. I don't know. Maybe you don't want me on your show.
yeah.
I don't know.
And
It's just sadly part of it.
yeah, and you mentioned there Coronation Street, and I do think that the key thing to mention is we do watch TV differently. Like previously, you would have only watched Coronation Street on TV or on the ITV catch-up service of whatever it was called at the time of wherever you want to take that reference to. But then YouTube came along and things were being put on YouTube, and I think that what makes it interesting with Coronation Street is the fact that now it's on Disney. Obviously, Disney Plus has some ITV stuff due to the deal with ITV, but having Coronation Street on there and only having the that week's episodes, because no one's going to be watching Coronation Street on Disney Plus on a Friday to catch up when it's on YouTube and on ITVX and it's on TV. But do you think that having a partnership like that where you can put the stuff on, do you think that would sort of help to sort of revive soaps more if there's like Coronation Street being on Disney Plus? Do you think having shows on like more soaps on show streaming services like Disney Plus? Because obviously Neighbours did extremely, even though it's cancelled, it did extremely well and still does extremely well from the outside world. I don't know the individual numbers, but do you think streaming will help the birth of soaps to continue, or do you think that soaps are going to fade out because of the way that TV is going?
I don't know. It's hard to answer. I think what's interesting about soaps is they used to be the sort of thing when everyone would go to the pub quite a lot and talk about what was on TV,
Yeah,
and they had that thing, which I don't know if people do that anymore. I mean, it's hard to have a show that's on every day that people are talking about. They're definitely it's still possible. People do still watch them. I think what people forget, like there is still audience numbers there for them. People still find them interesting. People dip in and out. I mean, EastEnders Christmas episode. I know it's a one-off, but it does very well. People, it's still an institution. If I think if you're a brand
yeah,
like EastEnders and Coronation Street, more so than River City because it's different because River City's not been on as long and
yeah,
it's plays to a smaller audience. They are sort of household brands, whereas River City is in Scotland, but it maybe doesn't have the pool of people to become that brand in the same way. But no, there's definitely I think they'll live on. I mean, the way that streaming works and things as well. Like there's probably new and interesting ways you could adapt as well and take a soap. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I don't think the soap's dead, but it's definitely changing, and you know, hopefully it changes in a way that can still create work and opportunities and play a vital part in training new talent and things which soaps do so well and are so important for.
yeah. And I think that the issue that I think that faces the soaps, in my opinion, is not having them represented at the quote unquote soap awards. Which could mean two different things. There could actually be a award for soaps, but the ones that now Jane McDonald does, or did, it depends on what year you're watching this. But it's the way that River City and Pomlicum and all these other selection of soaps that are on that, as you say, air to a smaller audience. Why do you think that they obviously probably comes not in English and neither is Round Around, so it probably makes more sense why they're not featured. But why do you think River City never got featured, to my knowledge anyway, at the Soap Awards? Do you think it's because
Yeah, I
of
don't know.
a
The
smaller
people,
audience?
I think potentially that people used to always fight. I've definitely older people that have worked in the show for a long time always feel quite put out by that, and I think a lot of people in Scotland might feel it's a classic snubbing as well. To be honest, I don't know. I think it's probably just because it was only played on the two Scottish audiences. In my knowledge, I don't think it plays in the rest of the UK. I think people probably do what there would be a few people, random people that probably watch it, but
Yeah.
predominantly it's up here. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because from what I can tell, and bearing in mind I've never looked into this further, but from what I can tell, it airs mainly on the BBC Scotland channel.
Mhm.
So I do think you can see them, but because it's still owned by the BBC and because it's available on the iPod, I still would have thought that it would have. Because doctors, I mean, out of most subs, probably had the small. I had a very smaller audience than all the major ones that were featured due to it being daytime. That was even still, apart from its final year, was never nominated for a single soap award, which is quite appalling because the final was quite good. But do you think that do you think it's the audience that these awards go off, or do you think it's because of where it's been placed on broadcast, where it broadcasts?
I honestly don't really know. I mean, I don't who actually funds these award things as well. I mean, I don't know. I mean, sometimes you have to pay to enter an award. It could just
Yeah,
partly be money. Some awards, nominations, like I think even I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure to nominate your film or anything to even BAFTAs and stuff, you do have to pay for that. So it could just be financial. I
yeah.
don't really know all the ins and outs, to be honest. It's an
Um,
interesting subject, though.
But I don't think it's Jane McDonald that funds the Soap Awards because obviously it's not on this year, and she started hosting it the last time it was on. Which before we move on, had the most funniest beginning of all. It had not been on for a while. She comes on, it's pre-recorded at this point, and ITV crash. So they waste minutes because they can't air it, even though the Soap Awards are not live at all. It's pre-recorded, and ITV have a problem trying to air it, which makes me laugh because it was pre-recorded. There shouldn't have been any issue. It was probably very windy. Whoever was pressing the play button, but um, but as you mentioned already, you worked at STV, which is currently, from what I can see, having a boom with their invention because they've only just started doing STV radio, which is becoming the big thing. And you see everyone from Isa from Still Game, Jamie Mackinaly, she's a fantastic woman. I've interviewed her as well, not to brag. Um,
Another person I've had on my own show as well.
yeah,
I feel like I'm
yeah,
going to mention that again, and well, you know,
yeah. And it showcases that STV is worth watching. STV, the only channel I can think of that airs consecutively Shortland Street, which it's a cracking soap in New Zealand, and it had that brilliant program where former Brookside cast member interviewed a current Shortland Street, and it's the most funny thing because none of them know who each other are. She's trying to say, I used to watch you when it was on Sky One, and he's trying to say, I've got no clue who you are. I'm hoping I can understand what you're saying, and it is cracking only on STV. So, what was your experience like working at STV that now has this player that's representing shows that not even the channels that own them originally want to broadcast?
yeah. Well, they have a great acquisitions team there, which are doing great work. You know, I remember watching. I'd never seen Brookside, and I remember watching some of that when it was on the player as well, and be like, "This is great to be able to watch it." Yeah, I had a fantastic time at STV. STV drama is sort of it is part of STV, but you're not involved in all the stuff that's on the channel itself. Like we made shows for all the other channels and
Yeah,
streamers, so they're actually just about. They've got a show coming out on Netflix. The brilliant team there, with Rob Williams who wrote Screw, who's a fantastic writer. I've had the pleasure of working with. That'll be coming out later in the year. But yeah, we were when I was there. We were that was the main thing was we were doing the second series of Screw for Channel 4. And then we had a great slate of stuff we got to work. I still say we like I'm part of that team, but I sometimes
yeah,
still feel like I am in a way. I always it's my first job in TV, proper job in TV that
yeah.
was continuous. I have very fond memories of working there, and to be honest, would love to go back if in a dream world. To be honest, it was a great time. Who knows what the future holds? But yeah, working in TV development and that world was brilliant, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah. And do you think that having sort of that representation in the sense of even though even though you're making shows for other channels, you still represent in the Scottish talent. Do you think that that sort of represents not just to the viewer, but it represents to yourself that you know that program might be critically acclaimed, and you know that like 10% or 20% or whatever percentage are Scottish talent. Do you think that sort of gives you the sort of pride that you're representing the sort of the Scottish people in that role that you might not have ever thought of being something you could achieve?
Uh, yeah, I guess. I mean, I still get massive imposter syndrome working in TV, even 5 years in. Like, even doing the podcast, I'm like, what the, doing Just Get a Real Job. I'm like, what, and all that stuff. It's like this is mad. Like, why do people care what I've got to say, or how am I in this room with these great people and stuff? But you kind of just have to get over that and like, and try as best you can to remind yourself you deserve to be in the room as well. But yeah, no, it's really nice working somewhere where I've had the pleasure of working with some incredible talented writers incredible writers that are Scottish and that are able to help try and represent the country and their voices and stuff. But yeah, I mean, our Slate STV was it wasn't just Scottish either. It was there was writers from all over the place and shows from all over the place as well. It was just great to work in TV development and be so creative all the time. But I have to say, Tom, your knowledge of TV is incredible. I mean, I feel like I'm completely out of my depth here. To be honest, I know a lot about TV. You just got all the shows and knowledge, especially of Scotland. So
Yeah.
it's impressive.
And as because I think that when you think about TV in general, you have to sort of like look at it from every angle. You can't just go, oh yeah, I'm
Mm.
just gonna watch BBC One and go, oh yeah, that's really funny. But it's like the thing that makes it interesting, TV in general as a whole, is that when you watch, let's give the great example of Mrs. Brown Boys that is set in a fictional town in Ireland and filmed in the studio in Glasgow, which
Mhm.
I just think that's really hilarious because the next I don't know where they were, but they were on the Late Late Show in Ireland, and they had to because they just did a live episode of Mrs. Brown, so they had to then nip to the news studio that's next door to them, and so they're all sat on the very like purplish couch having a conversation to Ireland about a program set in Ireland but never filmed in Ireland. But do you think that that's sort of interesting when you see that there's studio shows that are set in, let's say, another country, like The Floor, for example? The American version is an American, oh yeah, American, but it's filmed in Ireland. And so
Mhm.
every version then is filmed in Ireland
The
because,
Line of Duty, I think, films in Northern in Belfast, right? It films
yeah.
near Belfast, yeah.
Yeah, and
So there's loads of.
do you think that's sort of good, good for the industry that these shows, even though they're not set and they're not representing, as we've mentioned, the place it's filmed, but do you think that it's good that they're utilising the resources that Scotland provide?
Yeah, I think it's always nice to. I mean, it's the same as what we were talking about earlier. Like places like trying to film it because it looks like New York filming in Glasgow or using the studio. I mean, it's always good to just have opportunities for local talent to work on. I think it's often the people that live in the place that's meant to be there are like, oh, why are you not filming here?
Yeah.
That's often the case. I mean, so you're never going to win, I guess, on that. But yeah, it's definitely good to have local talent
Yeah,
and
it's
give
like
opportunities.
Patience series two or series one. I don't know if it's both. The outside shots are definitely York, but all the other shots are filmed in Belgium, even though it's supposed to be murders in York, but it's filmed in Belgium. The original version of it was filmed in Paris, so it's not even because of the sets that needed using. So I do think that it happens more often, and that can't be cheaper. Like that definitely can't be
Yeah.
cheaper.
But
But
sometimes it's
yeah,
just for practical reasons, like the crew found it easier. I mean, the show I talked about right at the start, Karen Perry, like the Val McDermott, but they are based in the Val McDermott bits. Like that
yeah,
was set in Fife, where I'm from. We did film a few exteriors in Fife, but a lot of that show was filmed all over Scotland and mostly in and around Glasgow because that's near where the crew was based. Most of them, that's near where the production company that make it were stationed. So it's often to do with logistics and cost and various other factors.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And as we've got to this point in the interview, and we've mentioned it quite a few times, and it's interesting because the when you think of podcasts, there's a lot because there's a lot out there. You get all the ones where it's like, oh, it's Derek and Gene and the massive fans of like Buffy or whatever. But they've got no insider knowledge. They're going, oh, look at this whimsy, and then someone comes along and says you're watching it wrong because you can see a cameraman there when originally that cameraman was cut out that frame, which is the best bit of knowledge ever. Watching Buffy on the new when because of the new way of showing it, you can see the lighting man over there or the cameraman over there or a boom pole over there because when it originally aired, it wasn't meant for that ratio. So the DVDs had to fit to our wider screens, and so they forgot that the camera crew was stood when they weren't in shot, but then became in shot by accident. So you might have like a zombie or someone trying to kill Buffy, but you can see him before. And in the original, when you watch it on TV, the jump scare was just there. And those type of podcasts, you don't really get that sort of insight. You sort of just have to hope someone knows that as the actual fact. But when you get those like the rest of entertainment and all those really in-depth podcasts, and it helps. I think it helps other people that are really interested in those type of things. So rest of entertainment, they're interested in all sorts, but they want to know the facts. And then for other podcasts, they want to know how to get into the industry. So with yours, because you do it in a unique way from your point of view, from your angle, where was your thought process when you decided I want to join the world of podcasting?
I mean, it wasn't. I didn't plan it in that sense. I guess like it sort of I've learned on the job, and it's sort of become what it has through lots of trial and error and lots of hard lessons and all that stuff. But I started it just because I wanted to work in the TV industry. I didn't really, there wasn't a lot of information about it, especially growing up in a place like Glenrothes where I come from and stuff like that. It's like, how did you get into this? Like, so I had some interesting friends at uni, and I thought, just could interview them, see what happens. I didn't expect 5 odd years on that it would be what it is now, and it'd be something that I'm now trying to scale and get sponsorship for and take to another level. But yeah, it's been an incredible opportunity, and the name Just Get a Real Job. And it's all that idea of like helping people to demystify the creative industries, make it more accessible. I guess it does have my own point of view in it. I always try to bring in my knowledge of where I'm at in my own career. But to be honest, it's who the guest is. It's not really about me. It's about who the guest is, because different guests have different insights to their own parts of the creative industries. But it's to try and help people feel informed,
Yeah,
probably less alone, be honest about the difficulties of this industry. Often, I love podcasts. I listen to so many great podcasts, but often they are people being funny or talking about the highs of their career. It's important to have conversations that are completely honest about not just the highs, but also the lows, the realities of working in the creative industries. It's not always easy. It's a really brutal industry sometimes, and I think it's important to have those perspectives as well. So I always try and have really open and honest conversations with the guests about the good parts and the bad parts of having a creative career.
yeah, and I think that what's interesting is there's a lot of roles in industry that no one's ever heard of because they're not the first thing you want to do. So I was watching Doctor Who Unleashed, and there's a bit where it's a work experience where Stefan think of his last name. But Stefan does these work experience bits where he tries out the job. So it might be he got to shoot a gun once because the props people were faffing around with the gun that he thought, well, that's work experience of trying out the props. And one of the ones that really interested me that you sort of because there's not enough information about these online and what your podcast is sort of expand on this where it's like you showcase that there's other ways of getting into it is
Mhm.
I think I don't know what the job is, but it's where they're holding and it looked like just holding colours because someone's trying to check the colour balance and do all that jazz on the camera, but it's just it was a woman in this case, but just stood there looking at you're just looking at a lot of colours. And it's like, well, how hard can that be? But it's hard for the other people because you have to make sure that the colour you're after matches everything else. And do you think that your podcast will help people further on get into the industry, not just for the major jobs like director, editor, whatever, but get all the minor jobs that you won't have heard of, but are equally as important as the big jobs.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I try to have different perspectives and voices on, like whether that be agents or because often we know who agents are. We don't know how you do that as a job. For example, it might be a costume director, but it's not just in TV and film. Like the podcast is also other careers as well. Things I've had artists on, I've had musicians on, people in bands. It's very broad, and I think that's what's interesting about it is help just people understand how you get into this industry, whatever part of it you want to be in. This, like my most recent episode is with Luke Wright, who's a really well-known and acclaimed British poet who tours with people like John Cooper Clarke and stuff. Like, it's super interesting for people, hopefully, to find out how do you actually become a full-time poet. Like,
Yeah.
for a lot of people, it's a pipe dream. So it's all of these things, and I think behind-the-scenes stuff like Doctor Who Unleashed or what it used to be Doctor Who Confidential when I
Yeah.
was growing up are a great insight because what you don't know how these industries often operate. So it's great to see the BBC making stuff like that. I think it's a really useful resource, and that's what I want the podcast to be as well. I want it to be a really useful and insightful resource.
Yeah, and I think for me and then probably other people like it, you can sort of see the behind the scenes, not just on the one like Unleashed or the Torchwood one that I can never remember the name of, but the ones where like documentaries on DVD extras and watching like how like there's interesting things you learn. So the thing that I learned was that someone somewhere when they were making I can't remember the name of the film, but it was a World War II film that was animated about pigeons. And it had a all-star cast. Hugh McGregor was in
Oh,
it.
the Valken, it's like
Yeah,
something Valken or something. Yeah.
that's it. And we rewatched it not that long ago, and the extras are absolutely hilarious because they've animated the bloopers. So instead of just having the bloopers that you watch where it's someone messing up a line, but it's they've animated the pigeons to mess up the line as well. And so you can see the scene and and then you watch him walk back to do another retake, but it's the pigeons doing it, not the people in the booth. But do you think that because there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, do you think that that's an interesting way where if you look at 10 years down the line, you can see who would watch what to get into the industry? So we mentioned Doctor Who Confidential, and you can find 10, 15 people that are now in the industry because of that. And do you think that that's where you want your podcast to be? So in 10 years' time, there's a load of people that will have heard your podcast at some point in their life, and then they've ended up in the industry because of that. Do you think that that's something that you sort of hope for, or do you think that that's something that you'll be proud if that does happen?
I'd be very proud if that happens. I'm not sure if it will, but yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think it's nice to just know you're having if you can have an impact on anyone. It's lovely for me getting any messages from people going like, "I really loved this episode you did," and I'm going through quite a hard time, and it's really helped give me some hope or whatever it might be. And sometimes it's not. It's just small things like
Yeah,
talking to somebody about, I don't know, we touched on at the start, the TV industry, for example, at the moment, it's really tough and nearly half of the industry are out of work or not working regularly. Like, even some of the episodes I've done on that, what's been really nice is people going, I just feel a bit less alone because it's nice to hear other people acknowledging
yeah,
this, talking about it. So anything like that's lovely. I mean, if anyone's inspired, then that's a nice thing to know because it is all about demystifying the creative industries. And I kind of see it as a bit of a social mobility vehicle where, these things are not often talked about enough or there isn't enough resources out there. But what's great is things like TikTok and Instagram now. There's some brilliant accounts and people that are doing this stuff every day, and it's so much knowledge out there now. So yeah, it's great to see.
yeah. And I think that it's good to have more resources. So
Mm-hmm.
you could probably name three other podcasts that are in the similar sort of educational field that you're in, and that's good because if you listen to, let's say, an Archer's podcast, you've probably listened to them all at that point because there's not going to be too much dissimilar conversation occur. But because with if there's like multiple versions of your sort of like educational genre, it means that you get different angles on that. So you might have the same conversation about a certain part of the industry as someone else might have another podcast, but you get a different angle on it. So do you think that that's what's good about that sort of genre in podcasting? Because no same podcast will have the same opinion or the same angle on a similar topic that you all might cover. Like in the world of Doctor Who, we might all have a very similar opinion on an episode of Doctor Who, and that's probably not interesting if someone watches four reviews in a go. They'll watch one and then I'm done with it. Do you think that it's interesting that that it's easier for people to go, I listen to your episode about that than someone else's episode on another podcast and you get a different angle? Do you think that's what's really interesting about your genre you've gone into?
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's what's great. I mean, that's why I never see other podcasts as rivals. It's like, what can we learn from each other? How
Yeah,
can we? Well, it's great to have other good shows for the ecosystem, and yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the biggest things I've learned doing it is that no one's path's the same anyway. Like everyone's got a different way into this industry. I've nearly done 200 episodes to just get a real job now. It's like so different. Everyone's so different in how they got into it. So there's usually a completely different perspective or lesson, and also not everyone's right. It's a
yeah,
subjective. Sometimes it's subjective or anecdotally or based on your own experiences. Like my advice to somebody might be completely useless. It
yeah.
might be really useless to one, useful to one person, and then not as useful to the other. I hope not. I hope it's all useful. But you know what I mean. So it's good to have different takes and perspectives for people for sure.
Yeah, and I think that because you're from that angle of the I mean, the industry in itself is flexible. You could be from York and then work in Scotland. You don't have to be from the area particularly to be working on something. But from your angle, you get the sort of say of, well, this is what it's like up here, rather than someone else that might be from the general area of England. And they might all be quite similar because it's like, oh, if you work on that show, you'll end up working on whatever show because Scotland is growing. I think it's growing at more rapid rate than I think anyone could keep an eye on because there's a lot more shows coming out of Scotland like at a rapid rate. So you can probably name 12 really quickly. Um, I can't in this moment in time, but my point is still standing. But do you think that that's what's good for you as a host because you know that the way you're going to ask those questions are from your point of view, from what you see in the industry. You know that your area, and you want to try and find out what it's like elsewhere. Do you think that that's what's useful because you've got a different aspect on a different end of the industry?
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's because Scotland's often felt quite underrepresented.
Yeah,
There isn't lots of shows like mine in Scotland. That I don't think there's really any other podcast doing exactly what I'm doing. There's some great other channels. Like I know again to talk about Ash, who does Sonora. She's doing some great work as well in a similar-ish space. But there's not loads of other shows that are talking about creative careers quite like the way I am. I don't think in Scotland anyway. So it's nice to feel like you're able to do that. There's another. I feel like you always feel guilty when you say that. I mean, there's great podcasts up here, like putting it together and things like that. But yeah, it's good to feel like you're in that space and just because you're in Scotland, you feel part of that scene in a different way. And the Scottish podcast scene really is growing, and there's some incredible content creators coming out of Scotland, which is really nice to see as well.
Yeah, and so as we try and find the greatest point to do a whole loop, I love loops. Um, uh, and so with River City coming to an end, and with this documentary that slightly sort of going to showcase what we're going to lose, right? Which is quite sad because when you watch the Doctors documentary, which I personally think it's a shame that they've done it at this point. They could have done it a lot earlier and not had it talking about the end of Doctor. They could have just showcased it to showcase how incredible Doctors was. But and the documentary is fantastic. I am quite gutted that there isn't a whole series of documentaries about Doctors because it was filmed beautifully. But do you think that the River City documentary will showcase the sadness, or do you think they'll represent the what you had was incredible, but what you're gonna lose is also gonna be a big downer?
I honestly don't know, to be honest. I mean, as I say, like they are making it, but it's not really. I've not really heard much about it or had any real involvement in it. But I imagine it will probably just celebrate the show. I think everyone sort of accepted it's done, and instead of it's just thinking about what other opportunities it might exist in the future. So I think it'll probably be just quite positive, and it'll be sad, and it'll be sad for people that have worked in the show for a long time. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it'll talk about the loss too much in a negative way anyway.
Yeah.
Quite
Um,
off the bang.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier about the fact that because of River City ending and they're going to try and generate some new shows. They did similar with Doctors, but I've not seen the shows yet because I don't think they've been out. Like there's a daytime hairdresser uh, murder mystery crime light-hearted thing coming with Sammy Phillips, which seems to be coming out of Birmingham. But what made it weird was that it was about a hairdresser. Because I don't know what crimes could occur in a hairdresser apart from the hairdresser accidentally chopping someone's head off with a razor. But when River City does cease production, what will from your point of view and from where you are in the industry at the moment, will you what will the impact be on the what will be the knock-on effect is a better word for it. What will be the knock-on effect from your point of view of the loss of River City?
I think it ties into some of the stuff I've talked about in this episode. It's already a tough time in the industry. Like, it employs a lot of different people in different departments. It's not that there won't be jobs and opportunities for people. For me, the argument I've always made is there is opportunities, but often a high end drama might run for 3-4 months, and then you're going to have to not work for another couple of months. So it's rare to have that continual employment in
Yeah,
TV. So I think it will take away that opportunity for people to have a continual income stream, which is difficult because often there is those big peaks and troughs in TV. For me, I feel most sorry in some ways for the writers because if there's I think must employ about 40, at least 40 writers a year.
yeah,
So that's a lot of talent that isn't going to get an opportunity because there isn't that many chances to write on high end drama, really. I mean, it's the same 10 or 12 writers that do most of the big shows now in terms of like being the showrunner, and then you might get like a wee guest writer slot. So it's really tough for writers, and I do feel for them. I think that's a big loss. It's just giving writers steady work and stuff.
yeah,
There's lots of opportunities to have a career. It's more about having a sustained career, which we need to really work on in our industry.
yeah.
There's a huge issue with that. People not being able to work for months on end, and if you don't come from a privileged background, it's really hard to sustain yourself doing that.
Yeah. So as we come toward the end of this glorious dictionary defining interview, I know that there's I don't know if there's as many as some people make out, but there's a lot of NDAs. It sounds like there's more NDAs now than there was last Tuesday. But what upcoming projects are you excited that you're allowed to talk about due to not being NDA'd, or the other word that I always did like embargoed, excellent word, that you're excited for people to see, hear, read, or even look at?
Well, I'll be completely honest. There's no NDAs that have been signed by me. Really, there's nothing. I am out of work in a few months on Riverside. I've been applying for jobs. I'm trying to find more opportunities, but I've got nothing particularly lined up. I am working on a project with another podcast, another content creator, which is I'm really excited. Hopefully, will be coming out in a few months. All I'll say is that I might have more than one podcast in a few months, which is exciting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's something been going on behind the scenes, but just get a real job. There's some great episodes lined up, recorded, coming out in the next few months as well. Yeah, just hopefully keep growing that, keep plugging away, and hopefully I'll have some income coming in as well in a few months, and won't be unemployed for at all, if not for too long. Because it's a very strange time for me going through a lot of change. But yeah, hopefully it'll be alright. But yeah, just get a real job. I try to put an episode out at least once every couple of weeks at the moment. So there's lots of great stuff on there, and I post on TikTok and Instagram most days as well. So there's some exciting videos and good stuff there if you're interested in navigating the TV and film industry or just creative industries in general.
Yeah. And the very much cliche question of all is the podcast available on wherever they get their podcasts from?
Yeah, as they always say, like available from all good podcasting platforms, but
Yeah.
yeah, mainly YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all those places.
Yeah.
Just search "Just Get a Real Job" on any of them.
Yeah.
Similarly to Instagram and TikTok and all that is just at "Just Get a Real Job." So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And you mentioned they're all good podcast platforms. There's a lot of podcast platforms, so I'm assuming the good ones are YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And
they are the main ones. Yeah,
yeah,
although
they're
some
the
people like Amazon Music and
yeah,
like there is other ones. I can't even think of any off the top of my head, but they go on them all. The amount of platforms
yeah,
for podcasts is actually a bit mad. Like you look at your when you put them out, you're like, bloody hell, like Castbox, all these, yeah.
yeah,
So you can listen to them anywhere.
yeah.
Just hit
Uh,
downloads. That's fine by me.
and by September, what I can gather, Apple Podcasts will now have videos. So you can watch it within the Apple Podcast app. So you open the app and watch, let's say, Rob Beckett's podcast with Josh Widdicombe that is on that's visual on Spotify. You can watch that on Apple Podcast shortly.
That's
Uh,
good because the Spotify feature is very good, and
yeah,
my podcast is fully video now as well.
yeah,
So yeah, that's great.
yeah. And from your opinion, what would you? Because I heard it a lot on Graham Norton. I say a lot. I heard it twice. What would you call? Because I know that on the Traitors Uncalled they call it a visualized podcast. But what would you call a visualized podcast? Because apparently the term is a visualized podcast.
I just would just call it a podcast or a video podcast. I
Yeah,
mean, it's become one of the same now. I don't personally watch podcasts much, but
yeah,
people seem to love it. So fair play,
yeah.
give the people what they want.
Because apparently they're called Viz pods,
I'm
according to
not
Graham
having that.
Norton.
I'm not having that.
It's an awful word. There's a lot of awful words out these days, and Susie Dent probably has a book based on awful words. Not swear words, but like awful words that modern people use that not necessarily really encapsulate what the word should be. Visualized podcast is a word that should be used. So, as we come towards the end of this interview, and this is your opportunity, without giving away your home address, where can people personally track you down online?
Well, I think I mentioned a minute ago. Yeah, just search at Just Get a Real Job on Instagram or TikTok. You can also, if you really want to, it's a bit of a strange platform, really, but you can follow the podcast on LinkedIn as well. Yeah, that's the main platforms that are used, and on YouTube, which I've already mentioned as well. So I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but yeah, at Just Get a Real Job, we're on there.
Yeah. And so there we have it. Another wonderful, epic interview. Thank you for letting me interview you.
Tom, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. I'm so impressed with your knowledge of Scottish TV, man.
Thank you.
Um, it's impressive for somebody not from the country. You probably know more about Scottish TV than me, so fair play to you, mate.
And so there we have it. There'll be more interviews down the pipeline, which isn't a pipe nor a line. Um, Very funny. And there we have it. There'll be more interviews by me. Yes, well done. Thank you very much. That is my own compliment to me because obviously, who else is going to compliment me other than myself? Because that's what you should do in life. And thank you guys for watching. And remember, no, I've forgotten.